Okay, so today I'm going to talk about innovation, scaling, and digital extension in the scope of our CIRNA project. You have heard in the group meetings every now and then about our work, and today I'm going to present that in more detail. So I'm going to take you to Uganda, and I'm inviting you on the farm of Osi. This is Osi. And Osi is 35 years old, and she has 2 children. She's a female household head. Her husband passed away. And she has 2 acres of land with maize, banana, beans, and some vegetables. You see some salad and also even other crops. It's quite diverse. And she has pigs and chicken. Yep. And here you see the pigs. Osi is AI generated, so I could ask the AI to open the fence so we can look inside the stable, since it's about manure and we want to see how it actually looks inside. And so because she has pigs and she's based in Uganda, she has been selected for the CIRNA project. And CIRNA stands for Circularity of Nutrients in Agroecosystems and Co-Benefits for Animal and Human Health. And it's funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation, together actually with SDC. And it's a solution-oriented research for development program. So in our case, this is 3 years, it can be up to 4 years, where there are 2 years of more fundamental research. We're closing some knowledge gaps. And then the last year, where we are now, it's about reaching out back to the farmers, training, scaling. And you will see that this digital extension idea fits into this reaching back out to the farmers part. And our project has a lot of partners. There are some international research institutions. Agroscope on the Swiss side is on the lead. We work with ILRI, the International Livestock Research Institute, especially the Mazingira Center that Lutz used to work for, and that is in Kenya, but also ILRI in Uganda, our partners. And FAO, they are doing emission modeling. It's the livestock team that we're working with. And then there are local research institutions, 2 universities, one in Uganda, one in Kenya. We're working with their students, and we're also integrating manure management aspects into curricula, which is currently not being implemented. And then we have farmer-facing organizations. You see down there is WOFAC, Women Farmers Association of Kenya. They are an extension service that is mostly focused on women, because women are often not reached by classical extension services. We're going to have a look at what are extension services actually and how does that work. And Regenerate Africa, they're working on regenerative agriculture broadly, and Vétérinaires Sans Frontières, they work on livestock topics. So they're on the ground, they have ongoing projects before us, and also they will have projects after us. So working with them is very good, because building their capacity will live on in them beyond the project duration. So we have teamed up from the research side, doing the first 2 years very heavy on universities, Agroscope, ILRI, and the last year now is more heavily on the farmer-facing organizations. And this is our team at Makerere University. Last year, we are trying to meet in person at least once per year, trying to see are we actually delivering what we have promised, and advancing and updating each other. We have monthly meetings, but then when we meet in person, we are looking back and also planning ahead. And the aim of the project is to identify and promote improved manure management practices among smallholder farmers. And in Kenya, we're focusing on cattle farmers, and Uganda on pig farmers. And so for Kenya, we chose to work in 3 counties that are representing quite a diverse agroecological gradient or setting. So we work in Embu, Siaya, and Nandi. And in Uganda, we work actually close to the capital, Kampala. There's a hotspot for pig production. So it seemed very effective to stay there. It's also for logistics more handy for us. But there are still also some differences in agroecology. So it's interesting for us to see what difference does that make in the manure management outcomes. And so what have we done as the project? First, we wanted to know what are actually the current practices, what's the status quo, what farmers are doing. And also, how is that sitting in the overall farm and food system context? And so what we did, we collected household data from 600 households in Kenya and Uganda, so 1,200 overall. And actually, we went 3 times to the same households. One, to introduce ourselves, gives them some time and to think whether they want to participate or not, introduce ourselves. The second time, for the manure management survey, that was really focused on what livestock do you have, what do you do with your pigs, your cows, and the manure. And then I went back, maybe you remember last year, it was October and November for the tape surveys. And I have trained enumerators, and they have continued actually until this February, March, collecting the tape data. And so now that we have these insights, we're actually still also analyzing, and we are starting now the farmer trainings next month. So we're going to go back to around 600 households training farmers. And we also have engaged policymakers actually from the beginning. Beside collecting data from farmers, we also have lab trials and on-farm trials to test some composting practices. And we have analyzed the policy landscape to see where is manure management anchored in different policies. Is that in the waste policies or more in the agricultural policies? And it's very scattered. And so we have done this analysis. We have consulted policymakers, and now it just happened in Uganda that we had a national but also a district level workshop, so per district one, where we have shared our findings, and we also informed them on what we found and what we saw on the farms, what's currently the status. And so this is how the project timeline went, and we're right now in the trainings, and the policy workshops have just concluded. And just to be clear, what do I mean with farm and food systems? So we are going to see farmers, right, in their households, and they have crops and livestock, and there are certain people on farm or hired labor. So let's keep out the hired labor for now. There are people on farm staying in the household providing labor. So that's a system, right? But then you have the food system, which is larger. Farmers might also import seeds and fertilizer, and they buy additional food for their own consumption or feed for the animals. And there might be hired labor more from the surrounding neighboring farms or from further away. And they are also having outputs from the farm towards the food system, in the sense that they are selling maybe their crops or part of the livestock or livestock products. So with TAPE, we contextualized the manure management, which is happening on farm, into the context of also the food system, since we are asking with TAPE, how are you connected? How are you exchanging information? What are you purchasing? What are you selling? So we contextualized it in that way. And what's also very important, so manure is handled on the farms, but by whom? We need to know who is handling the manure in order to know whom are we targeting with information. If we're only targeting men, the household heads, which is the cultural norm actually to go into a household and first talk to him. But if he's not handling it, nothing will change because he doesn't know what's currently done and he's not responsible for implementing that. So sometimes we have to work maybe with the external labor or the women, which is actually often the case that women take care of it, since it's considered a waste that was dropped to the women. Often women are taking care of household, let's say, food security, and as soon as a crop is more for sales and profit, it's the men who take over the more profitable aspect. So this was important for us to understand the social structure of the management. It's not a technical problem only to solve. And now zooming a bit out, smallholder farm systems, why are they important at all? I mean, there are many smallholder farm systems, and in Kenya, 6.5 million, in Uganda, 7 million. And they are quite food secure, relatively low productivity compared to their potential yields, and also high losses. With losses, I'm referring to post-harvest losses. So sometimes they produce, they have a good yield, but then there's fungi, they don't store it, they can't dry it correctly, and there's also quite some food losses. So why is that? Actually, they have small land sizes, so they have a limited production quantities. And often the smallholder farmers are still net food buyers. So this relates to the food insecurity. And also the food availability is seasonal. And as I mentioned, they have high post-harvest losses. And inputs, and this refers to the low productivity, are often not affordable or even available. If you really live remotely, maybe you could pay for it, but you have to transport it. If you're buying fertilizer, it's actually quite heavy. So not always you can transport the amounts, or also your fields are not all around your homestead. One might be quite far there, but how do you transport it? So that can also hamper productivity. Now, what is interesting, we are looking at livestock, right? Livestock is a relatively high value for a small area. So that's interesting for these small size land farm systems. And you have all year round food. You have milk, you could slaughter a chicken. That's different than crops already. It makes you more flexible. And often farmers keep livestock also as a cash bank, and they sell when they need some money. And also the manure, it's already theirs and it's on farm. Actually, it's quite heavy, yes, to transport. So also still often the fields around the homestead get the manure. But at least it's nothing that they need to then buy from somewhere else and transport from somewhere else. So these are promising entry points for improved manure management, so to say, innovations on farm around manure management. So what do I mean with innovations? It can be technologies, which is more technical, or techniques, which is more a practice, a change of behavior. For example, turning the manure is more a behavior. Unless we're talking about a specific tool to turn the manure, then it's more something technical. So it could be, just to give an idea, what is an innovation, something new to handle the manure, either with from a technical perspective or behavioral perspective. And so how do farmers innovate? They could have, of course, their own innovations. That's often actually the case. They know their system best, right? And then they do trial and error, and something works, and they all have slightly different practices, and we can learn a lot from that. They could also exchange with neighbors and see something, or they get it from external sources like researchers or NGOs who are presenting something, and then ideally they can try it hands-on and they see the effect, or there are some trials where there's a control field and then where there's an intervention, and they can go and see, for example, applying manure to crops, and they see the difference over the growing season. And a process that we also used is co-design. So we learned a lot from what the farmers do. And we also did the surveys to really capture what do they do in terms of what we know one could do, but also we asked farmers, what do you do differently than your neighbors, for example, trying to tease out what are their innovations, what solutions have they found specifically. And so now going back to Osi and her pig manure management. So here I've tried to represent a bit what most farmers in Uganda do. Most farmers in Uganda with their pig manure, they heap the manure, they don't cover it. There's no solid liquid separation, meaning there's the hard part of the dung and then the urine. One could separate it because urine could flow off if there's a slight angle in the stable. But this is commonly not done, and they don't use protective gear, meaning gloves or rubber boots. And this is a figure from my colleague. Also say there are some farmers that have pig pens. So what we refer to is such an installation, and tethering is tying the pig to a nearby tree. That's also sometimes done, but most of them have pig pens, and the main practice is heaping. So that's coming out of the manure management survey.
What's heaping?
Heaping is making a heap, like she has over there. Yeah. And the idea is for composting, when you heap it, it heats up, right? And that kills pathogens. And that's important. And you would have to turn it also to aerate it sufficiently to keep these heating processes going. We will see that in a moment. The problem with these main practices is that the nutrient losses are high. If you just heap and you don't cover, rain falls on it and it washes out nutrients. There's high emissions. There's smell, especially for pigs when you don't separate urine and the dung. That's really quite an order. And you have animal and human health risks, depending on the animal side, how often you clean the stable. Are you disinfecting the stable? That's also not commonly done. And the frequency is not very encouraging to see. And for humans, if they don't wear protective gear, that's also a danger. So the idea is with manure management, it's an entry point, both to higher crop productivity if you keep the nutrients. It has climate relevance if you manage the emissions. It has relevance to animal health and also to human health. There are really a lot of benefits. Sometimes practices improve on one dimension and could increase the emissions actually, but that's exactly our task that we looked further into. And these are just examples of the trials we did, sometimes turning them, covering them, adding biochar. I don't want to go into detail because that's not the point of this presentation, but just to show you what we've done, the surveys, and then this was the lab trials. And then we have results, for example, on this is the temperature over time for the different treatments. And you can see that covering is helping, and biochar prolongs the thermophilic phase, and yeah, the thermophilic duration improves the sanitation and decomposition. So we have looked into technical details to really know what can we recommend. And the trials we did, they are also relatively small. We try to keep them as closely as possible to smallholder context. So how could that, it should represent what smallholders realistically could do. So for more information, because again, this is not the focus of my talk today, the technical bit, but if you have questions on what management practices would work and what's the exact effects, what does it optimize, or where there's maybe also trade-off, we have a YouTube channel for CIRNA, and Sonja Leitner has recorded a nice presentation explaining what works how. And so you could scan that. Maybe you're also part of our CIRNA LinkedIn group. This is connected and you can find the information there. So to keep it very simple, what are improved practices? If you clean regularly, if you have safety gear while handling manure, covering the manure, and that can really be with banana leaves. It doesn't need to be a plastic sheet or something expensive. Turning the manure to aerate and compost it better, adding ash or biochar. And then the question, of course, was why don't farmers do it? We asked both for manure management, also for agroecological practices, what are your drivers and what are your obstacles? And the main one, and of course there are others, and we recognize that also for the further design, but the main one was lack of information. And that was the case, this is for Uganda, and that was the case even more in Kenya. So what we did, okay, how are farmers getting information currently? Through the extension system. So in almost all the countries I've worked in Sub-Saharan Africa, you have the Ministry of Agriculture, and then they have one level below at the county or district level extension offices, a few, and then below that, even more extension offices at sub-county and district level. So who are they? They hold agricultural information. These might be students who have been trained on agronomy, and they are supposed to answer questions of farmers and also implement or be aware of what the government, what direction the government wants to go, for example, for food security. And they should know about subsidy programs and all of that. But the problem, extension ratio is 1 to 1,000 often. So one extension agent for 1,000 farmers in a remote area where they don't get paid a lot and they don't have fuel for their motorbikes. That's what I hear over and over again. They can't keep up with the information demand. And basically, when one farmer is able to pay them something for going there, they would rather obviously go there than somewhere else. And the extension system often doesn't reach women. And that's why we work with this Women Association of Farmers of Kenya. So in this tape survey, we wanted to know, I added some questions on how do you obtain information, whom do you trust, what do you use to connect to people and get agricultural information if you really have a question. And they said, okay, radio shows, talk to neighbors, WhatsApp. And so I thought, oh, WhatsApp, interesting, because we had already thought about a mobile phone application that UMI has. Could that be a pathway? But farmers said, you know, not everyone has a smartphone. The smartphones are so different. They don't have the highest quality of smartphones. They don't like to, or sometimes they cannot download an app, but they would rather stay in the channel they know, which is WhatsApp, for example. So we asked, and in Kenya, our farmers had 82% of them had smartphones. Here I'm talking at household level, but it could also be that several people within the household could have a smartphone, and we captured that. But it's more men than women who have smartphones. And for Uganda, only 28% had smartphones. So WhatsApp was not working. Can you see it again?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to speed up as well because I see I'm a bit late. So the idea was that we can use the WhatsApp channel for Kenya, but we should also have an SMS, maybe dial-in option for it to be more inclusive, also especially towards women or those more poor households that can't afford smartphones. And for Uganda, that pathway was not possible. So we analyzed the problem. So for farmers, they have a lot of agricultural challenges, and one of the main challenge was lack of access to information. We found that in literature too. But if we look at the problem from the side of development agents, including, of course, our project, but also other institutions, we have now limited budgets. And how can we reach farmers with the information that we have generated? Because activities often stop when projects end. And there are digital advisory solutions like using the phone, but they have a relatively low social fit. That could be because some of them are commercial. They're actually from input providers trying to sell farmers something that's not necessarily the best for the farmers. Could work, but it's not impartial. Then sometimes content is so academic, it's no way that farmers can really digest and access so much text. And some are applications that farmers cannot download or launch or use, and then it's often not inclusive. So either you often then have a channel and non-smartphone users cannot access it, and has a short lifetime. So there's a project offering something, the project ends and the solution disappears. And also, whom do you really trust? That's also a very important question for farmers. So the solution that we have thought of as a project is to develop an inclusive digital extension, and that's a WhatsApp chatbot for Kenya with an SMS dial-in option and a voice-based platform for Uganda, so a hotline. This actually already exists. Farmers can dial in, but there are no livestock contents, and we wanted to add the manure contents there. And we work with Viamo. It's a social enterprise. They built ICT solutions for development, and they reach a lot of people already in sub-Saharan Africa. In Uganda, they are having this hotline already, and for Kenya, they're building the WhatsApp chatbot now with us. So how does it work on WhatsApp? Instead of adding a person to your WhatsApp, you add it as if it was a person. You can ask a question and the bot answers. So it's AI driven, and we are training the bot only with our evidence-based information that we are feeding. And for the hotline, it looks like this. I want to demonstrate. So if OSI would call the hotline, it could sound like this. Oops, too slow. This is just to demonstrate. There are lots of other topics, but we are getting a designated space with an individual even dial-in number, so farmers can directly dial into this evidence-based information. And for now, it's the manure management and One Health topic of our CIRNA project. And we also actually validated the demand for the hotline and the chatbot through the surveys, but the hotline, we actually did a survey on the existing hotline of who is a farmer and who's interested in manure management content, and if they have pigs and whether we can contact them back. And Viamo reached out to 76,000 listeners, and 29,000 subscribed already that we can contact them back, and we could add that to our application for the funding. I'm skipping that right now, but we looked into what do competitors do, what pricing can we offer, because we wanted to apply for this SNSF funding, and we asked for 150,000 francs. And the idea was that we can reach more farmers, because currently as CIRNA, we have farmer trainings. We will reach around 600 per country, policy workshops, policy briefs, radio shows, videos, TV, that is covered under the CIRNA budget. But now with the TAG extra money, we were aiming to reach 50,000 more farmers with the chatbots in Kenya and 125,000 for Uganda. Of course, that doesn't mean that they also implement something. And we are asking them also to evaluate what we give. And we make follow-up surveys asking, was this useful? Did you implement something? And for us, it's also interesting for the chatbot that we can see what farmers are asking. Even if we cannot answer that, we can analyze if there's any topic, any problem that we haven't addressed yet. And that's something to argue for new funding based on what farmers really look for. So the innovative aspect of this is actually the business model. So we teamed up also with this social enterprise, Viamo, and we are aiming for financial sustainability. How do we do that? We offer other projects and institutions to also host their content. Farmers are not only interested in manure, they're interested in all kinds of crop topics, could be health and anything. So this needs to be evidence-based, and we will use for quality assurance a similar peer review process as there is for papers. So if we get content, we assign experts blind review of the content, and we will also still check that, and that way hopefully we have really a good quality, and they will pay for their contents, and it's a really cheap rate because I'm already paying for the basic infrastructure. They only need to pay for training the bot on the topic and for a certain reach. So that's a good win-win. And we get 20% commission of what they pay. And commission, of course, we don't want money, but we want further reach and further topics potentially. So that's how we negotiated that with Viamo. And we have a partnership with the mobile phone providers in Uganda. It's Airtel and Safaricom. So that happened. I didn't do that. That happened through Viamo because they're already established and well connected. So we got the grant, and that was in March. Contracts are being done now. We're building the chatbot now. We're building this voice-based messages on manure and One Health. And we're building the partnership. We had a kickoff yesterday. We're handing over contents today. How do we reach farmers? Through the trainings that are ongoing anyways. We make them aware that they can sign up on the chatbot. We're not pushing messages to the numbers we have. We're inviting them, and they can sign up if they want to. We have the CGIR network in Kenya and Uganda. Through extension agents, we had to work through them anyways for our survey, so we're in contact with them. We will share the bot and the hotline information with them. Village health workers, in every village there are 2 health workers, and so we want to use that network as well. Radio to raise awareness, and Viamo's existing user base, at least in Uganda, for the hotline. We can tap into that. Now, how do we invite other institutions to join with their content? We do one-on-one conversations, and we talk about it on LinkedIn, and we already got contacted from some who are interested. Whenever I go, I'm networking, talking about it. There are some interested institutions already. We haven't built it yet, but we need to talk about it early so they can budget for it, and they could provide the content so we can train it. We offer these packages. You saw the pricing. And we do videos and post on LinkedIn, so we see how that goes. But the business case is with Viamo in Kenya, and that's important for sustainability, that they have an incentive to continue. So the next steps, now we are training the bot, we're recording messages, or rather Viamo does that. In July, mid-July, we have the prototype, and with the prototype, we are going to have co-design workshops. We are presenting a preliminary version to farmers, extension agents, and getting their feedback. What can we do better? Does it technically function? So then we have until August to incorporate the farmer feedback. Also, when I'm going to conferences, hearing what people are interested in. And then in end of August, it should be adjusted and we launch officially. That's where we're starting to reach out to farmers directly and we advertise it. And so we're trying to learn whenever any one of us goes to some event and we hear feedback, we capture it in a document and we learn from each other. And beside that, we have still the CIRNA tape data and the manure management data that we're analyzing and writing up papers. So this is the last slide, really. The title was Innovation, Scaling, and Digital Extension. Maybe you've seen that slide before. Actually, when I presented myself here, I also showed it for the first time. There are different dimensions of scaling. It can be that someone does an innovative practice and does just more of it. When we think of scaling, we mostly think of the scaling out, meaning reaching more farmers. We want to see that the improved manure management practices are taken up by more farmers. Okay, so this is the farm dimension, but this is embedded into an enabling environment. This can be the policy framework, this can be markets. Is there actually a market for manure, for good quality manure? That could be very interesting for some farmers too. And then there's scaling deep, which aims at cultural shifts that are sometimes necessary for action to happen. So what we do in CIRNA, we really are serving many of the dimensions. So for example, we are building existing local researcher capacity and curricula development. We have these policy briefs and dialogues. We are working with women champions. So when we are going for the trainings, we will also record and let women reflect on what this means to them, to inspire others to take up action. We have flyers and videos. Actually, here I'm passing that around. These are flyers for Uganda in Luganda language, and it's a sticker. And the advantage is that it doesn't disappear into a drawer or drops on the ground, but they stick it to their house or door. Others see it. It stays there for longer. It's a bit more expensive, but we hope that it stays more visible and on the mind. So we have distributed them in the end of the tape survey, not to spoil our results from the manure management survey, but it was in the end. We left them at least with the basic information that we already knew would be good practices. And then website, blog, social media, and the digital extension is now the new bit that we have added to the scaling thanks to the TAG grant. And also now we have a demonstration and the feedback session to the digital extension, the co-design as part of the trainings that we're having with farmers anyways. So these are the different elements, how the CIRNA project works on hopefully scaling improved manure management practices in different dimensions. And also important, I mentioned we work with system actors that stay after the project ends. We're trying to build capacity of businesses that stay, and it's not really ours. We're just accompanying the process. And this is the team for the digital extension page. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for your attention. I don't know, do we have an hour in total, an hour and a half for this work, for this meeting? No, 1.5. 1.5, okay. So then I guess we have a bit of time for questions. 9 minutes. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, it's a very basic question, but the VIAMO that you mentioned is complete. So what are they exactly doing? I mean, in this project with this chatbots, and this, are they doing
general? Yeah, so ICT solutions for development. I learned about them because they have also, what did they do? They have actually developed an application and actually a portfolio of digital approaches for another project that was very successful. It was in Rwanda and Uganda. It was on banana wilt. So I heard from some colleagues at CGIAR that they are doing a good job, really listening to the demands of the farmers, and they have been very successful and had some good impact, including, I think they did also RCTs, randomized control trials, where they evaluated the effect of this digital extension outreach versus not choosing this pathway. And I even also called with someone from the World Bank in Washington who had overseen that project, and they recommended VIAMO for these digital extension solutions. So I've engaged in conversations. We actually also thought, should we build something ourselves, or should we improve or help improve something that is there? But in this case, now we have full control over quality, over the data, and this way we are learning more intensively. It's mostly a learning process because it's new for all of us in the project. Yeah. So VIAMO is the technical partner. Simon, and then Sibyl.
Yeah, thank you for a nice presentation. Just wondering, you said something like other research project that had like similar outputs. The problem was there that's after the project ends,
yeah,
somehow it just gets lost. How is it now for you, or like this project? It's like CIRNA also ends at one point.
Yeah.
How will this thing come?
Yeah. So the idea here is that we're leaving some legacy. So maybe the scaling up and the scaling deep are really long processes. This anyways takes time. Never you can achieve like a really system change within the 3 years, especially since we're only starting to communicate in the 3rd year. But it's a start, and we are, I would say, plant the seed But you're right, the seed has to be irrigated and taken care of in order to grow into something that bears fruit. And so we're trying from different directions with the actors that are in the project. For example, WOFAG, Regenerate Africa, VSF, ILRI, they're all on the ground and they are now aware and they can still use our insights. Also, when they do a training on livestock, then at least they have good material, they have videos on the manure management component that are project generated. And training extension agents too, not just farmers, so they can multiply the knowledge. It's actually a pity that we don't do a second round of surveys where we have a first one and then an intervention and then we can maybe see the effect. We don't have that. So I think I mentioned it the other day in the group meeting. I had a student from Wageningen and she did whole farm modeling where she used modeled the baseline farm and implemented the individual and combined practices to at least see, okay, what could be the impact at whole farm level. So we're creating awareness that hopefully stays. And now with the chatbot and the hotline, I'm really hopeful that this will continue through others also buying in so it can financially sustain itself. So the TAC funding is for 1 year, but I'm paying for 2.5 years of operation. Of the 150,000, over 100,000 francs go to Viamo. It's their business. We're also buying, brand rights. We bought the domain. They make an income if they can continue, but they also need to sustain the quality. Otherwise, they will lose credibility and they will lose buy-in. So we're setting up the system.
How positive are you that this works? I guess this is also quite a lot of work to keep like all this evidence based and how confident are you like in these partners of this book?
Yeah, I'm hopeful and I will keep you updated how this works. I would think that for Viamo, there's it's a very exciting not just project but business because they could secure their income, right? And we are linking them systematically to ILRI so they can maintain this peer review system. I don't think it's too much work. Also with the hotline, we're recording the contents that are actually quite universal. These basic practices we're describing, and they are there. We don't need to re-record that. It's a matter of continuing to pay for that, which will happen if others are also hosting their contents. I'm hopeful that it could last 5 to 10 years. Maybe that's okay because technology is changing and life is changing and doesn't need to last forever, but it should not end after 1 year. Yeah. So it would be already a success if we have, so we are aiming at 2 other institutions paying for something just to continue beyond what we have paid for. Yeah. And Sibylle also had a question.
My question to the, the farmer to farmer knowledge exchange, very relevant also here. So for scanning out. So my question is, do they use the smartphone also not only for the app, but also to contact their neighbor?
Yes. Yeah, they do. And that's what we saw that they use often if they have smartphone, WhatsApp, and otherwise they call each other and they often exchange agricultural information. Yeah. And they have these farmer groups as well, where they occasionally meet and exchange on any problems and solutions. And so our hope is that it will also organically scale among them. If it's really useful for one farmer, he or she could share it with others as well. And for the hotline, Viamo has a partnership with the Airtel, this mobile phone provider, so farmers can make 10 calls for free per month. That's already a lot. And I think it was 10. I was even hoping it was less because I would want to see if farmers are willing to pay for it. Only if they're willing to pay for it, you see that it has a value. Yeah, but we need to soon.
I think it's,
How does the phone call end, or I don't know? Is it continuing, or is it one topic and then you hear one thing, or?
I think you can possibly choose to re-listen or to continue going back to the menu or going to the follow-up lesson. So we're currently still structuring. We have the topics and we are now In the next step, Viamo will make a suggestion how we link them. And also interesting that we can build in questions every now and then, and we see what farmers are choosing. Are they interested in the animal health topic, the human health topic, and the economic, more focused topic? So even with the hotline, we do get some feedback.
Yeah, my question was very similar to that, because whenever information is passed, the important question is how to get people to ask the right questions. And yeah, you showed it in the hotline that basically there are topics being talked about. Is that the same for the WhatsApp chat, that there are suggestions on what topics you can get information, and then they choose or does it work? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, so what I've seen on other chatbots, I think we might possibly do something similar, is a menu where you can roughly already choose what are you interested in, crops or livestock or something. But I want to see what Viamo is suggesting on based on their experience, and then also with the farmers, when we're testing it, we are listening to what they want.
But how do you make sure that people actually want to learn something new?
Yeah, if they don't need to sign up. It's only for those who want to use it.
But then you're not reaching them.
Yeah, that's true. But if they also don't want it, then sorry, I don't think anything else will reach them. But if they are looking for information, which is what they told us, of course, there can be a bias. We are a research project. What can we offer? Knowledge. So they might also just answer, we need knowledge. So it could be biased, obviously. And still, we were surprised. We didn't think it was so much of an issue. And now we're building on that. And we see how's the buy-in. We're also learning. And if it fails, at least hopefully we have all learned something from it. And I'm confident that we are still reaching at least our farmers, and it's an offer to them. And so that's my minimum goal, to reach a few more at least. Maybe we don't make it to the total number that we are targeting. But if we reach double of what we had originally, that's already good for farmers, I think. And also maybe to add, the WhatsApp chatbot is in English and Swahili. And the Ugandan hotline, per contract, we agreed on 3 languages that we're still choosing. Actually, today at the group meeting of CIRNA. And but they have offered now 5. So Viamo is also really committed to make it accessible. Yeah, and maybe one last question. Is it? Yeah.
I was wondering regarding the numbers. You said like in Uganda the use of the smartphones is way more scarce, but you reached way more people in Uganda. How did you manage? Was there a way bigger campaign or?
Yeah. Maybe it's confusing. In Uganda, there's a hotline that you can call with any phone, a feature phone. You can just call a hotline. So it's through the hotline. When people call the hotline, they were asked, hey, by the way, are you a pig farmer? Yes. Are you interested in manure management? Yes. Can we contact you back once we have this? Yes. So that was this. Many said no of the 76,000 that Viamo reached out. So they already have this hotline, but they don't have these contents currently. That's how we reached out. So these are some smartphone, but mostly feature phone users. Yeah. Okay.